Ginny, do you want to say a few words? If you can hold the microphone up to your mouth.
I think what a lot of people will be interested in, and perhaps Andrew, you might just comment on. We talked about funding, but are we likely to be able to give the sort of certainty of funding that perhaps we are suggesting isn't there at the moment? So this good feedback we've had from local authorities, do you think we'll be able to reflect something fairly positive for Government and Transport Select Committee to think again about the level of funding?
I think the simple answer is yes, of course we will. I think we've done quite a bit of work around thinking what that funding profile moving forward should be. I mean, clearly the amount of it is down to government to know what it's got to make available. We've looked at sort of 3 different areas of where different people have come up with a funding envelope, and within the report we set that out and come up with a sort of recommendation to government that sort of will be consistent, I think, with what Transport Select Committee, but actually make the point that you have to have continuity and certainty moving forward, and whilst 5 years is far better than we've got at the moment, actually we do need to look further, not to give an absolute certainty of funding, but enable the sector, local authorities and those working for them actually to invest themselves in the processes, and in addition to that, actually to start to think about what needs to be there to support, as Matthew outlined, that wider call of things of looking at this in the whole rather than at it from an individual local authority point of view. So I think we in the review when it comes out, there will be that sort of certainty and a call in there, and clearly we hope government listens to that and understands that, which I think they will. Mike, anything from you?
Yeah, just to add, I think what we're talking about here is a long-term investment programme and the certainty that brings for local authorities, because speaking as a local authority highways person, we get money in dribs and drabs. Quite a lot of it is through competition, and that competitive process actually leads to quite a lot of wastage in the system, because authorities will be competing for money, spending money on bids, and then some of those fail. So I think actually it's about a long-term investment programme. I think the sector can deliver much more efficiently within that, because at the moment we get money at the drop of a hat. We're expected to spend it very, very quickly, and that leads to sort of inefficiencies in the system. You go for the quick wins. Contractors can quite often charge a premium because of the short period of delivery required. So actually, the longer term planning is going to be essential for the sector. And I think another point we haven't particularly drawn out is that the revenue funding cuts, I think, have really hit on things like cutting back vegetation, which is starting to sort of encroach on sustainable transport networks. So, walking and cycling networks, which are going to be absolutely critical for us going forward in the face of the climate emergency, the need to push more sustainable travel. Actually, the revenue funding is the really critical element in keeping those networks open. So I think the report covers all of those issues, which we haven't necessarily had time to talk about today.
One area that sort of we've sort of referred to in the review and started to think about is how we might help make the case for more investment, and picking up on Mike's points about the wider impact of highways, and just the way we might think about highways moving forwards, not in the sense of sort of any reclassification or looking at sort of the governance of how highway authorities sort of govern in that sense, but actually how we actually think about what our local highways do, and just start to articulate that maybe in a slightly different way. So we've floated some ideas in the review that just start to link some of those wider agenda pieces about sustainable transport, etc., how we might make the case for perhaps funding coming from other areas. And that's not something that's going to happen immediately, but it's something that certainly over a sort of 5-10 year period we could start to talk to other parts of government about what local highways do for their areas. So health, for example, the whole issue around climate change and the move towards sustainability, which we need to address as a sector. So I think the report starts to bring out some of those issues, not making clear recommendations, but just to say these are areas we need to think about as a sector. So Matthew, have you got your voice back for a bit?
Hopefully, yeah. I think one of the issues, and being very optimistic, and I'm that sort of person, if there is more money coming into highway maintenance, there will be a challenge for the industry to be able to deliver that. Because I think, local authorities are struggling around resources, and also the supply chain needs to be geared up also to deliver that. So I think there may be a question about how quickly the money comes in terms of does it need to be brought in incrementally to help local authorities then spend it effectively. What we don't want, I think you were touching on this, Mike, was suddenly an extra 420 million to be spent by the end of March. And nobody's going to spend that effectively. So it's really important that in terms of modelling this extra money, there is engagement with industry just to say, well, what can you cope with, what can you deliver? Because the last thing we want to do is get that money and then find we're not spending it effectively.
I think what CIHD has the opportunity to do here is to not just reflect the excellent input from local authorities, but also to help paint that wider picture. Because I think the argument inevitably will focus on funding, but the reality is we need to understand better what that funding will buy. And that's both an industry issue as much as it is an issue to put to local politicians and central politicians. So I hope that what CIHT can do is give it some of that breadth. You were talking about sustainable modes of transport. We will talk about what are the outcomes that will be achieved by this money. So that bigger picture, I think, is hopefully something that CIHT will bring to a debate that actually, through circumstances probably not of our making, will now give us yet another chance with the new government to raise this whole thing about what does the local roads network really do and why it should be funded properly.
Okay, thanks, Ginny. Yep, good. And anything else, anybody? In which case, Matthew, do you want to say a final few words before your voice goes? Do one of those jokes again.
It's not like that, it's just like that. No, okay, well, I say I'm an optimist. I think, we are in a situation where do nothing is not an option. And I think the work we've done is going to help contribute to the discussion going forward. And I think it's whatever government. I think in doing this work, what we picked up is that it's not only a local political issue, it's a national one as well. And local roads are so important to our economy and social well-being. They're important to our day-to-day lives, getting to hospitals, getting to schools, whatever mode of transport. And local roads are imperative to the economy. So this is a really important time. And I do hope that this report we can get in front of the new government very quickly in the new year and have that dialogue. And then we can have a very constructive discussion going forward in terms of helping to deliver on a lot of things we put forward. So I end on that positive note. It's really good to be able to speak to you, well, with a half a voice anyway. And I'm very proud of what we've done today. And anyway, if you've got any further comments or interest in this, please get back to us, because the report isn't quite finalised, but we'd still be interested to get your views. But hopefully, you do support in general that what we're trying to do here. So thank you very much.